What's up, Nubians? Welcome to techn00bians, part of the Geekish Network. This is your weekly deep dive into video games covered in blackness. I'm Charles, aka Chuck, one of your hosts. With me, we have Shanae.
Hey, folks.
Cherie.
Hey, everyone.
Travis.
What it do?
And we have Ryan.
Yo, what's up?
For those that you don't know and you're tuning in for the first time, techn00bians is your weekly video game live stream and podcast hosted by Black technology industry professionals to discuss what, when, where, and how you can get into the world of technology, specifically video games. I'm going to end it right there. We're going to go into the gaming news. Travis, you're an Apple fan.
I think that's putting it a little lightly, but yes,
Yeah.
I'm firmly in the orchard. They had their
Born in the orchard.
Yeah, they had their
about announcements.
Yeah, they had their surprise event. It was interesting to see. They of course have a brand new Mac iMac, which comes in every color Skittles you can possibly imagine. It was kind of cute though. I dug it. I'm not gonna get it.
Are you gonna buy one? I was gonna ask you.
A new purple iPhone.
That's right.
Which was interesting. I wish I would have known that before I bought my gold one, because nothing probably says unapologetically black, much like purple.
No, see, it was a different type of purple though. It was like a lavender purple.
It's sort of that McDonald's Grimace purple. You know what I'm saying?
But they made it Prince purple. Would you have bought it?
I feel you. And of course there was a new iPad, a strange new sort of Apple AirTag, which was kind of cool.
Get you some AirTags, dog.
Yeah, it was. It's kind of cool. It's like their version of Tile, right? So that was interesting. I'm trying to figure out, like, do I lose anything enough to actually use that?
That's my Apple remote. Just my Apple TV remote,
right? And speaking of
Is that it?
They got this new Apple TV, but it seems like the only thing that's really different is the remote. Like everything else.
Wow.
Yeah, but Shanae, but the crazy part is, right? If you look under the hood of that new Apple TV, there really isn't much that's new, right? Except the remote. And so if you have the old Apple TV, you might as well just get the remote and call it a day.
Which is exactly what I'm gonna do, because like I just bought the now old Apple TV in December.
Yeah.
And so now the new one came out and it's the exact same, and I just gonna get like a $60 tax to get a remote that's not trash. So I'll take that.
And the first thing I was thinking as soon as I saw it was, it's like, why don't you put that AirTag on the Apple remote so I know where the hell it went? Because I spend more time looking for my Apple TV remote than I do actually using my Apple TV remote. But most of the time I just end up saying screw it, and I use the remote feature on my iPhone because I never lose my phone, right? Yeah. So look, I think you've got Apple. They're doing this transition from their proprietary hardware to from Intel and everyone else. And I can appreciate that. But the more I watch these Apple events, and I know this is not going to come as a surprise to a lot of people, they're just gimping their hardware to sell it, right? They just are, right? They're saying, like, what I can't understand is like, there's a camera in the new iPad, okay? That is, it looks like it's better than the one in the iMac. Right?
It
is.
And I don't
all the folks who are
understand
still holding their iPads up to like
right
concerts to take a photo.
because it has that because your iPad had that new feature in it, that
And the iMac doesn't have it.
Yeah, that recognizes like there's more than two people, so it like automatically adjusts, sort of like the Facebook portal does.
Yeah.
It's a firmware update.
It's a cool technology, but I'm sitting here thinking, why isn't that in the iMac?
Because it's a firmware update to the OS, and they haven't done that yet.
Anyway, so and every time I see now, and this is going to be my this is it. I know I'm taking a long time on this. Like
as long as you give equal time to Nintendo.
I'm righteous in my rage here, but like seriously, Apple, just make a computer that you can touch the screen.
They really should.
Just do it.
The iMac should have been that computer. They should have made it the 27-inch iPad. That's what they should have done. It should be just like the iPad.
Yeah, how many people? I mean, like the only thing you can do with that iPad now is supersize that bad boy. And let me tell you, when they supersize it and make like a 32-inch iPad, I don't care how much it costs. I'm getting it.
Everybody's gonna get it. Everybody's gonna get it. They're like, people don't like touching screens. Like, what do you mean? We touch screens all day long.
I wanna roll around on it, you know? Oh, yeah.
We'll be real mad and dropping 3K on that thing.
No, 3K. That's the smaller one. 3K is the smaller one that has no like 5G or anything like that. It's probably gonna be like 30K.
Just buy this for a car.
That's the one with the 2 gigs of RAM, probably.
Yeah.
2 gigs of RAM.
2 gigs.
With no SD slide in it. Yeah.
No SD slide.
You need to buy a dongle.
That's the thing. It's gonna have a proprietary charger. You're gonna have to have dongles out the union.
We wanted to make it so thin that you can't actually. You need an adapter for like your power cable.
Right.
Hey, they went to USB. They went to USB-C.
So I feel like honestly,
they did. They went to USB-C.
This and last thing I'll say is like this is the first time like I really took a look at what they had to offer and kind of went.
But they're not losing you. You just had to think about it.
Like you know what I'm saying. Like most of the time I'm like, take all of my money. This time I'm like, hey.
Hey, the iPad, I'm excited about. It has an M1 chip in it. So basically, the iPad is basically the MacBook, the regular MacBook with a touch screen. That's basically what it is. That's what they basically made. They should have done that with the iMac too. They should have done that with the iMac too.
Come on, man.
Like, oh, you got rid of the MacBook last year.
Yeah.
And you really turned the iPad into a MacBook. It has an M1 chip in it, so I can run all the software.
Yeah, and now your iPad more powerful than your AirBook, than your MacBook Air. What the hell's going on?
Yeah.
The iPad is more powerful than the MacBook Air. It is more powerful. Well, speaking of, since you said Apple took a loss this week, I'll talk about what took a win this week.
All right.
At the DICE Awards, Hades wrecked shop. The independent game Hades that was out a year before it was really out. A wreck shop, and I think this going to show a new version of game design. They're like, here's early access, you guys. You pay us for it now, you'll have it when we actually say it's ready. So it's like actually eating the icing of the cake before the cake is baked. Mm-hmm. And you're just eating icing, you're eating the spoons, and that's what they did.
Isn't it awesome though?
It is amazing. It is amazing. But let's talk about what they had to go against. Right, best game of the year: Animal Crossing: New Horizons. Nintendo, Ghost of Tsushima, PlayStation, Half-Life Alyx, Steam, The Last of Us, PlayStation again, and Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. Damn. I bet you Sony's like, we're gonna get this one. We got three horses in this race. We're gonna get this horse.
No one's mad at Sony right now.
Yeah, and Hades like, nah, we're gonna take this too. Give me that.
Okay, all right. Honestly though, okay, and I'm gonna keep it as real as I can here.
Mm-hmm.
When you see those people like win Oscars or Emmys or Tonys or whatever, and they say it's actually an honor just to be nominated, I honestly believe that, right? Like if you're in that small group, you should feel pretty damn good. I mean, that's a nice group to be in. Right there, you know what I'm saying? So, and Hades is just like that little engine that could. But I tell you something about Supergiant, and Supergiant ain't no joke, man. They've been doing they've been doing this for a minute.
Yep.
Yeah. Right? People are like, when they released Pyre, they're like, are they done?
I know.
Crappy. That game was amazing. It's just nobody was playing it.
I buy Supergiant stuff just like without any kind of reservations. I'm like, Pyre wasn't my jam, but I don't feel bad that I bought it because I'm like, I'm generally happy with every single thing I get out of Supergiant. You guys can't. I don't know if you can see my little transistor character that's hanging out back here. I mean, like they work for it.
They
and
work
like,
for it.
Yeah.
one of the things I thought was amazing. Well, just one note. One thing that was amazing about that game too is that I had my designer friends online, and they were talking about, we keep talking about making games bigger and making them more complex and more complicated, and you can go anywhere, you can do anything. And Hades, like Supergiant, rolls in here with Hades and says, maybe the future of game design is a linear narrative.
Yeah.
In a small field too.
Yeah.
On a
it's just
small
fun as hell
field.
to
We don't give
play.
you a big field. You just hit the button. You mash the button all the time.
I was getting so many Devil May Cry vibes off of that, and like in like a different way, but like there's they have so many different layers and levels of complex combat in it.
Yes.
That is simple enough that anyone can have fun with it. And of course, we
Yep.
got to talk about their godhood system in that game too.
You made a great point, and that's exactly what I was going to say too. It's like they just say, hey, let's stay in this lane. A lot of times when people build games, they feel like they have to do so much, right? And that's usually how your game gets away from you. Your game gets away from you when you feel like you have to serve so many masters. But Supergiant, over and over and over and over and over and over again, prove that pick your lane and go deep.
Yes.
And people will thank you for it, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because it's just like it's like the difference between going to In-N-Out and a Cheesecake Factory.
Yes. 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 That's a good analogy. That's a good
What I'm saying?
analogy.
Because if you're In-N-Out, you want a burger.
You know what you're getting.
Yeah, if you're at the Cheesecake Factory, ain't no telling what you want.
The only thing I'm getting at Cheesecake Factory is cheesecake. Everything else is like, I don't want to read a novel to get a meal.
And I don't want to add for designer jeans in my menu. What's that?
Yeah.
But what if you want some designer jeans and some cheese?
Maybe you need some designer jeans at all that cheesecake.
I mean, the chances are you're probably at the mall anyway, so you can find some designer jeans.
That's
yeah. But not only did they win Game of the Year, they won Artistic Achievement. So the artistic achievement of the game is really high. But they also took home the Game Design Award.
They deserve it.
They took home the Game Design Award. So they, and they had some heavy hitters in there. I mean, Animal Crossing's in the Game Design Award, but it's Animal Crossing, Nintendo's been perfecting it for the last 20 years. Astro's Playroom, which I thought was probably going to be the winner, because when Sony released that and Asobi Studio released it, I thought that was a damn near perfect game. Ghost of Tsushima, Half-Life Alyx 2, which is a VR game, and The Last of Us Part 2. And Hades was like, nah, we're going to take that too. And it goes into today's discussion, which is game design, more game design, and how important it is. Because people, when people pitch ideas to you, they give you like the everything game, and you're like, that's not a game. That sounds like work.
Yeah.
Can I also note that Hades has been up for Game of the Year for a few different these big award shows and stuff like that too, right? But when it's in the same category, basically, Animal Crossing was also up for Game of the Year for a few different things too, right? And whenever you wind up with these sort of off the beaten path games like your Hades and your Animal Crossing that don't look like these big triple quad A $500 million budget games, like you always go into it and you're like, oh yeah, I'm so glad it got nominated, but it's never gonna get it, right? It's going to Last of Us 2. It's going to Ghost of Tsushima. It's going to something that looks like Game of the Year. And so I'm so excited that they just got their flowers, because they deserve it. It's a really good game, y'all. If you have not played Hades was one of those few breakthrough games, I think, that doesn't look like all the other games, but that still everybody still played it.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so excited that it actually, and I will not I will not doubt that the pandemic probably had something to do with that. We were also out in the streets and stuff. Folks probably would have played Ghost of Tsushima and Last of Us 2, and they probably would have given it to one of those two.
I mean, because think about this. I mean, because we've all been sort of in that room, right? Like, imagine if you had Hades and you're at any other place besides Supergiant, right? It would, you would have been hit with these questions. Where's your multiplayer? What's your DLC plan? Right? Like, where's this and this and this
microtransactions?
And they were like, nah, man, we're gonna make a game where you just slap people the entire time. And really the difference is how you slap people, okay? And I'm listening.
And also like the other thing they did that was amazing too, like you said, they just perfected their craft and they just said, look, we're just going to do what we're really good at. And they also supported that with gorgeous art direction and really thoughtful and in-depth music design too. The soundtrack for Hades is real good. Soundtrack for basically everything that Supergiant puts out.
I was gonna say, like, real good. They had a narrator for a whole entire game and you were just captivated by that.
I got songs from Bastion still in my playlist, you know, right? Like, so they just hit it on every single angle. They are not the folks to mail it in. And then also, of course, there was that story that says that they go home at 5 p.m. on Fridays. So just bucking the trend of game development in general. It's like,
I mean, you can actually enjoy your job. What a concept.
Yeah.
What is that? And it's interesting, right? Because we did ask that question, like, what is it proving out, right? And I think that what it's proving out is that you don't need 50 people to make a game.
You don't need 50 people, nor do you need to work 80 hours a week every week.
Right. It is possible, right? If you know what you want to be, if you know what you want to be, and you relentlessly like attack that, you'll get there. Yeah. Right. And just bravo. I mean, seriously.
I mean, they're taking a stand against the industry overall.
And you know, them winning that award proves to me that the people who are actually voting on those awards are people who make games.
Yes. They're not just game aficionados or connoisseurs. They just devour games. Right. People, you take in the culture that made that game as well.
Honestly, I knew that was proven a while back. There's a good friend of mine. He used to work at Sony Online, and then when Sony Online shut down, he grabbed one of the programmers, and they went off, and in 9 months they made a game that was exactly like Call of Duty by themselves. These two guys, they just built everything. They built the world, they built the map, they built the characters, everything, and they had a little demo game that they were using. They were going around and they were showing people. So I mean, and they did that about this was probably 5 years ago when they actually did something like that.
Wow. Yeah. People like to say they own people, so that's why people love big studios. All these people work for me. I cut their checks. It makes me feel special. I think that's a part of it. But speaking of studios and publishers, Cherie, you have some news for us, right?
Yes,
from the lovely state of Texas.
Yes, from the lovely state of Texas. No, I want to talk a little bit about what Gearbox is doing. So they were standing up in opposition to an anti-trans bill. It's Texas House Bill 4042, and it's basically like about trying to it's trying to bar transgender athletes from participating in sports that match their gender identity. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because I love the fact that Gearbox is basically, making their voice known and saying, hey, we're not going to do business, or we might expand outside of Texas if you guys continue to make laws like this that are discriminatory against not only the people of Texas, our employees, and make it hard for us to to bring in and establish the culture we want to have. I appreciate that. I know that there's a lot of focus right now, particularly over in Georgia with the anti democratic laws that they're putting in place over in Georgia, and companies speaking out about that. And you've got folks who are like, oh, companies, they should stay out of politics. Listen, every company is in politics, whether they're saying anything or not. So I appreciate when you've got a company that's willing to come out and stand up and be like, you know what, we actually want you to hear our voice. We want you to know what our stance is. And we're going to hit you where the only way people will listen to it and will actually only thing they understand is when it affects their bottom line. And I appreciate them saying, you know what, we're not just going to stand by while this law, while you guys try and pass this law. We want to speak out against this.
Absolutely. I mean, when a company makes a decision to not say anything, actually that speaks volumes.
Yeah.
The world in which we live is very complicated. It's very complex. It is constantly one step forward, two steps back. Sometimes it feels like, or at least maybe a step back and a step sideways. And this kind of discriminatory legislation, it's really important for companies to speak out against this nonsense, not only for the sake of their own employees, but just for the sake of I don't know, life.
General humanity. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's like this kind of stuff is like we've seen how these kinds of things like you know, racism, bigotry, sexism, like transphobia, all these things, they're still always there. They just reinvent themselves over and over and over again, right? And so
Mhm.
what we're seeing is stuff that keeps getting repealed. And they're like, well, what? Maybe we'll put it forward this way. Oh, maybe we'll talk about bathrooms. Maybe we'll talk about athletes. Maybe we'll talk about this, that, and the other. And it is the exact same bigotry that we've been fighting against for decades.
Yep.
And I think it is super important. I'm really excited to see companies coming out here, and especially video game companies too, because I know a lot of folks talk about like, oh, take my politics out of my video games. It's just a game. You know, I don't want to hear about politics. I'm like, listen, half these games are war games. You think war games? You think a game about like, you know, shooting up Nazis in like in the 1940s is not political? It's the same argument I hear where people say, take the politics out of X-Men. I'm like, take the politics out of X-Men?
Have you? Do you
Guys,
know
let me
X-Men?
introduce you to this concept of like a analogy.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know?
You know,
A
one thing that
metaphor.
make Gearbox stand out to me in this is that they spoke about it before it was after the fact. Before the
Yes.
fact.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
It speaks
Yep.
volumes when companies speak after the fact. It's like they're clout chasing at that point.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact they came up before this bill even passed, when they hit the floor, they were like, hey, we will leave this state if you pass this bill.
Yeah. Yep.
I appreciate
Totally
that. I
agree.
mean, we saw what happened in Georgia when a lot of companies started coming out to talk about the anti-voting rights bills in Georgia after it already passed. And don't
Mhm.
get me wrong, I'm glad they're speaking up, but you know, like, can we be proactive instead of reactive all the time? Because
Yeah.
reactive means you have to go in and change. You got to repeal stuff. You got to change legislation. You got to, like, it's harder. It is harder to put that, you know, what is it like? Put the horses back in the barn, cat back in, I don't know, one of those analogies,
Cat back in
right?
the
The
bag.
toothpaste back in the tube.
Toothpaste back in the tube, right? So, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's a good call out. That's really important that they spoke out like ahead of time.
And Gearbox did this once before back in 2017. I think it was another anti-trans bill. I think it was like the bathroom bill that they were trying to do in Texas. And so Gearbox, at least, you know, they have a history of doing this. I appreciate that. I hope more companies will do this and follow their lead.
Either that or they
Yeah.
really want out of Texas.
I don't blame that either, but you know, I'm from Florida. I can't say.
I mean,
Hey, you're not there now. You're not
take
there
one
now.
more breath. We're leaving Texas.
Speaking of that, Shanae, you have some news for us, right?
Yeah, so this
Ringing
was
the
this
bell
was
like-
a fun thing that I think goes back to a conversation we've had a few times on the podcast. So, just this past week, I think it was,
Mhm.
fans put up a new billboard in downtown LA that had that asked Marvel to spoiler alert, bring Tony Stark back to life. Like, presumably in the movies, not just bring him back. It was actually like, it was weirdly worded. It was like hashtag bring back Tony Stark to life. Because I think somebody probably, there was a little bit of like, you know, a camel is a horse
'Cause they
designed
could
by
bring him
committee
back
kind of thing.
dead.
Bring him back. No, wait. Oh, this should be a cameo. No, bring him back to life. Okay, bring back Tony to life. And so this is in downtown LA right now, so it probably wasn't cheap to get that billboard made, but it definitely sparked a conversation among my specifically my game development friends, saying, "Oh man, that Snyder cut happened, and now we got folks posting billboards saying, can we get like a new Tony cut or something?" And it was bringing back flashbacks of what happened during Mass Effect 3 with the Mass Effect 3 ending. Like FCC filings and all kinds of stuff. And I think Infamous 2, I think had a big fan backlash of the character design. They changed the character design, so it's bringing back that conversation about the role of fandoms in creative decision making.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yes, where they want to retcon everything.
I love it. I love every bit of this.
You know, they're gonna be like, "Hey, we want to bring Duke Nukem back and change this."
I love it.
I've been a victim of this,
Bit of this.
fandom myself, because when DC changed Harley, I was the artist who actually did the art. I didn't create it.
Oh yeah.
Jim Lee did the designs, but I did the art and the cover. And Pete, this was the first cover that everyone saw, and then DC blew it up really big, and people were protesting
Ooh.
at Comic-Con. They were walking around with signs and all this stuff, standing in front of it, protesting at the DC booth.
Doesn't racism still exist? Is that the thing you said?
It doesn't protest that.
Were they throwing cans at you and bananas and
No,
rotten tomatoes?
They didn't get violent or anything like
That's
that.
good. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, there are some pretty racist people at Comic-Con too. You know, they probably hate it.
Undoubtedly.
What?
Yeah. There's racists in America.
Here's my thing on it, right? Is that like we couldn't, like, I love making video games, right? I love working in this entertainment space. We could not do the things we do without fans, right? And I absolutely love interacting with communities in ways which is healthy and productive, and that's part of what makes some of these, like, these games be the way that they are, right? I think it's interesting, and I don't even know where we're going.
I know where we're going.
Where we're going, Travis? Where we going? Is everything gonna get a Snyder cut now? Is everything gonna get a Snyder cut?
I hate to say this, but probably. Because here's the thing, like, we're watching basically the motion picture industry slowly turn into gaming. Right? And so what has happened, because before it had never been attempted, okay, Feige messed up and created an open world. Okay.
Yep.
And everyone knows that as soon as you make an open world, what's the first rule? It no longer belongs to you. It no longer belongs to you. It belongs to the fans. And if you want to keep them, you had better start listening to what they say. Okay? Because they will wreck you. Okay?
I can agree.
Because what happens is it forms this vicious cycle where you feed them exactly what they want, and they get fat and rich off of all of these offerings. And then as soon as you decide to introduce some tragedy or some upheaval into their once idyllic world, they revolt against you, okay, call you ugly, and want you run out of town like Frankenstein's monster, right? I mean, it happens. Everyone who's ever made a game that has had a live service attached to it has experienced this. And congratulations, MCU. Now you're live service.
It was such a perfect end to Tony Stark's arc. Like, it was like the I am Iron Man snap. Like, it even came back and
Says you, Shanae. You know how many nerd fanboys disagree with you?
I'm the arbiter right now.
So I just want to mention on here. So I both agree. I agree and disagree with you, Travis, because I agree, right? Like, when you create, when you create like some kind of, like, something like the whole Marvel universe, which is, it has become its own phenomenon. And, like, I mean, you have fans so invested in it, they do feel like this is their thing now. But it really isn't their thing. Like, they don't actually own it. But they do, and they think they own it, but they don't necessarily actually. Like, do you think Marvel's going to bring back Tony Stark to life?
Yes.
Probably. As Tony Stark.
Yes.
Like, as Tony Stark alive, not as a hologram or some other thing. I don't know.
Hologram Tony.
I don't know.
I do.
If they do, I don't know if it's going to be because of a fan campaign.
Okay.
I feel like I don't know. I'm just like, I mean, I'm not saying, like, Marvel's, like, I think Marvel has earned enough, like, cred with their fan base.
No.
They can do some kind of crazy stuff. Like, did Wonder
No.
Travis is here speaking to fans, because that's definitely what we need on a professional podcast.
No. Okay. Look, this is something I identified myself, that I freely, like, admit to people who ask. I see entropy in everything, right? I do. When I look at a ride, the first thing I'm thinking is, how's this ride going to end? Okay, I do. Okay, and the thing about it is that Tony Stark, as an intellectual property, is not worth anything the Marvel did.
I agree with
Okay,
that.
and so the thing about it is, it's like, if anything they can take from Warner Brothers is the fact that Batman don't ever die. He's always 30, right? And he is, and then if he's over 30, he's like 50, and he stays 50, right? And
Mhm.
so that's the problem that they're up against, is we have seen generational Batman. You see
Yeah,
what
Yes.
I'm
we
saying?
have.
We
Yes.
have seen generational Superman. We have yet to see generational Tony Stark. And I bet you, as long as you are black, ma'am, okay, there will be another Tony Stark. Yes, ma'am, there
Oh
will
no,
be.
so I'm not
Will they go to
Bring
disagreeing
back
Riri?
like
Steve
you want.
Rogers to life.
I'm just skeptical as to whether it will be because of a fan campaign or whether it will be because it's because Marvel sees money and they've got a plan.
I don't
So
know
Because
if
what?
those
we
things
know
are.
Marvel has a plan.
Real quick, folks.
Those are
Real
me
quick, folks.
choices.
So one more parallel for this too, because I think this is like we've seen this happen in movies and TV, and we've seen it called for in games, but very rarely do we see it actually like do I think we see it really happen in games on like a broad scale, like a Snyder cut version of it kind of thing. Uh, why do you guys think that is? I personally think it's because games are freaking expensive to
They are,
make.
and they lay
Come
everybody off when the product ships.
that
Yeah.
part too.
Sometimes before it ships.
Yeah, yeah, they lay everybody off.
Yeah.
I think it becomes so hard in the creative industry to strike, to get lightning to strike, that when you've captured it, you're loath to let it go. Um, and so, and as these movies get more expensive, and as fans get more demanding, okay, you're going to want to mitigate your risk as much as possible. Okay, and as soon as they release a Captain America movie that makes less than $1 million, they're gonna think, man, we need that Steve Rogers magic back again, right? And then you're gonna be 007 and the entire MCU all over again. It's going to happen. The question is when. When do they hit that reset button? Is it when
I can see
is
that.
when mutants come?
I could see that, but I think it will be driven. Like, I think exactly what you said. I think it will be driven by the bottom line, not necessarily by fans.
Well, who creates that bottom line?
Mm.
My P and L.
Fans.
Like, honestly,
Depends.
I mean,
Wait,
fans can take credit for it if they want to.
Well, they're the ones
But-
giving you the money.
I mean, yes and no kind of thing.
Yeah.
Let's keep it real here, okay?
Yeah.
Like these movies, these Marvel movies, make so much money not just because everyone sees them, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone sees them, and the fans see them 2-3 times,
Yeah,
and
and
then
they see
buy
them
them
too
on
many
the other
times, no
services,
matter what.
and
I'll
empower
guarantee you
all
that
the other.
everybody put that billboard up, saw Endgame 5, 6, 7 times.
Mhm.
So it's one of those, to get back to that conversation about fans saying, I want this, I hate what you did, I want this, but I can't help but buy it at the same time. So unless fans start to realize that putting a billboard up is not going to change creators' minds, but actually voting with their dollars, then they ain't going to change nothing. If they
Yeah,
see,
I mean,
you don't bring Tony
that's
Stark
true.
back, I'm not going to see the next 3 movies.
Yeah, that's true. Like, yeah, I mean, that's where the flexing comes in, right?
Yeah.
It really does. And I think what you're seeing, which is interesting as someone who exists in this industry, is how that power is going to be expressed, or what do they do? I mean, when we talk about the Snyder cut, there were some good things that actually came from that, right? Like, from suicide prevention donations, to awareness, to other things that were sort of lumped into there. So I applaud the fans, because not only did they take their passion and turn it into something that's actually real, but I think they helped a lot of people in the process. And so it's going to be interesting to see how movie fans as a whole interact with now this open world that Marvel has built.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still
It's
need to
gonna
make it
get
to
ugly
Act
though.
Two.
It's gonna get
I still
ugly.
need to
You
make it
watch.
to Act
I
Two.
wonder if it's gonna get ugly in games. If gamers start
It's
saying, "I'm not gonna
already
stop."
been ugly in games. What are you talking about? Like,
retcon. I need you to retcon this whole entire game. I want Uncharted 4 to be different. Do the whole entire game over.
The retcons happen. The retcons happen when your save games don't work right anymore. Like, I guess you better play this over.
Hey, Ryan.
It didn't happen that way. Prove it. Your save game don't work.
Hey, Ryan, you have anything you want to present to us? in the world of news?
Um,
Oh, we can't hear you.
Brian, you muted yourself. That's the mute button. That's the news.
That's a no, I guess. He's like, nah, yeah, I'm myself. I did it on purpose. Nah, I ain't got nothing. I ain't got nothing for you.
in the world of news, are you talking about my news or just like gaming news?
I don't know what kind of news you got. Like,
I got all kinds of news,
Let's do the Ryan news. I'm curious.
Do we want to
This
talk
up.
about the Tokyo shutdown?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
what's this?
Well, my bad. I actually just closed the window.
This is talking
I
about
need to pull
the
it back up.
That was the window shutdown.
That was the window shutdown. Oh my
Got
god.
too many windows, Ryan.
Huh?
You got too many windows.
I bet he could draw the news though.
was this about
The Super Nintendo World temporary
Yeah.
closing.
Oh, it was
because of the-
Osaka. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
COVID.
Osaka shut down. Osaka shut down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so Osaka shut down, and I actually have some firsthand information on that because I have some foot soldiers in Japan right now, and they actually talking. It's not just affecting just the industry or specific parts of Japan. This is all of Japan, and it's a shutdown for a week. So everything is shut down for 1 week. The only thing that's going to be open is food stores and like small places, small emergency places that needs to stay open, and that's basically it.
Wow.
But everything is shut down in Japan for the next week. And I'm actually going to take advantage of that because I'm going to do some live streaming out there too, because everyone's going to be at home.
So now you got a captive audience.
And I got a captive audience, so they have
Way to
nowhere to go.
capitalize,
Yeah.
Brian. It was very sensitive of you.
Yeah, I was a little bit skeptical about the Super Nintendo World reopening opening when it did. Anyhow, I mean, as much as I can't wait to go. Like Travis knows this. I cannot wait to go.
Mhm.
But
Okay,
that
on a
said,
serious tip, I want to go to Super Nintendo World
I
too,
mean,
so I can hate on it.
even
you know,
Travis
like,
wants to go to Super Nintendo World, right?
just so I can hate on it, really.
Yeah,
But
y'all should
I
go.
mean,
Y'all
it
should
is
make
a
it a
global
point to go.
pandemic. Like, there's like the rollout for the vaccine has been slow in Japan. I think, like real slow. Like I think we're seeing something like they're not expecting to get like real gains in their vaccine rollout to like 2023. So they just
Wow.
skip it over next year. Um, so yeah, this was probably a little bit like it's not surprising. I'm hoping they're able to get a handle on it. So I want
Yeah,
to go.
it's funny because like you talk about socially like distancing, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And we've all been to Japan, every last one of us here.
Mhm.
Okay. I don't even know how that's even remotely possible in Japan, right? I don't know how. I mean, I remember one time like getting on the subway, and you know how they would poke you with that stick or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the dude like pointed a stick at me, and I looked at him like, I dare you to touch me with that stick.
Yep.
It will be a full-on international incident if you touch me with that stick.
When
He just
80% of
backed
your
away, and I was like,
population takes,
yeah.
when 80% of your 200 million population take public transportation every day,
Yeah.
all day long.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
insane.
So I think this is a smart move. Definitely.
Mhm, mhm.
It makes me wonder, what can you do in a week? But
Yeah, I was wondering that myself. I'm like, only for a week? Because like that's the thing I'm worried about. I mean, I get it. It's smart for them to do it now, right? To try and get ahead of it, especially because the Olympics are still on, at least right now. Even though I think it's only they're not allowing any foreigners in.
I
But
wonder if it's a reassessment period or something.
I think it is a reassessment
okay,
period.
it must be because like, yeah, a week. I don't see that. I
They
mean,
said
it's
2
better
weeks
than
and it makes
nothing.
sense. So like, hey, everybody that has it right down, everybody stay home for 2 weeks.
Yeah, yeah.
And that way, we'll have minimum people spreading it. But speaking of that, we could talk about, Japan and people staying at home. The state of the gaming industry. Games have been played a whole lot due to the pandemic. And we've got some interesting games that rise to the top because people play all the AAA games and they're done with them. They're like, what else can I play? And they go to the mobile games and they go to the small indie games. Do we see the rise of the indie studio happening where people are
You don't have any
realizing?
choice.
You think so?
Well, you don't have any choice. I mean,
Yeah.
like seriously, like this last round, Microsoft went out with a crazy open, with like crazy dollars and bought everybody who was mid tier. They just did.
Yep.
They said, you get a studio, everybody gets a studio, right? So they just went out and bought like all the the top sort of mid tier studios, right? And so only thing that was really left are these indie studios.
Yep.
And the indie studios are like, they're the bells of the ball now, right?
Yep.
I mean, they really are. I mean, and what it's doing is it's allowing professionals that were part of these big teams say, I don't need a 50-person squad to actually do something. Maybe I can have a dozen people of highly skilled people, and we can go do our thing. Right.
Yep.
And everyone expects that kind of production from us. And there's so many ways now that you can distribute software and get it to people's devices. And there's so many more people paying attention now that this is a fantastic time. This is the best time I've known to be an indie studio.
And retroing is a thing. Retro gaming is a thing now.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
really huge.
Yeah.
They got retro consoles that cost more than our current generation of consoles. Like $400 for I could play Super Nintendo games.
Yeah,
$400. Super Nintendo never cost $400.
Yeah, though, I mean, how many times has Nintendo re-released all of their old games? How many times have I bought the original Zelda? On every platform it comes out.
At least 5 or 6.
Because Nintendo doesn't love its fans, and they almost charge you the retail price when it released.
They
They almost never sell stuff, put stuff on sales because they know they can get it. I'll give them that $60.
See,
I gave them $60.
But this goes back to our conversation before, right? Like we can like complain about it, but I still open my wallet.
Yep.
You're not gonna change.
See, but I don't. See, I try to make them pay for what they did to my son.
I'm balancing you out.
I don't have a son.
Hilarious.
Well, see, that's why Nintendo keeps making it because I'm buying it. I keep buying it.
I'm like, man, this shouldn't cost $60. Confirmed.
I'm like, I'm not gonna start up my I don't even know why Wii would start up again. I don't know. I'm not gonna start up my Wii or start up all these other old systems. They know. Nintendo knows.
This is why they can abuse you.
I mean,
and I used to take that abuse from Squaresoft. I don't take it no more.
I see. In this case, I'm like, you know what? It's a convenience thing for me.
Because all Square had to say was final. They said final, and I was already giving them $50-something. It's what final? It's the last one.
I remember paying $89.90, or my parents paying $89.99 for Final Fantasy 3, which is actually Final Fantasy 6 when it came out on cartridge back in whatever year it came out on. $90 for that game. It was worth it, but
was it though?
There's no one here. Am I the only one? Am I the only one who gets the the hypocrisy of that name?
The Final Fantasy?
No. And I say this as someone who worked there. But that's the point.
Is it really the Final Fantasy?
It's supposed to be the last. It's supposed to be the final greatest story of that civilization.
But is it
really where the hypocrisy came? Is when they started doing Final Fantasy X-2.
Yes. But let's talk about that, right? Because People May Fly just bought Phosphorus Games out of Chicago. They call it People May Fly. People Can Fly. People Can Fly. People Can Fly Chicago. And I'm like, people can fly. Y'all just released Outriders, and it's still not working. Focus on that.
Okay, why y'all buying studios? Y'all need to buy some bugs.
Yeah, but they bought
the crossplay ain't working.
This is their 8th studio they bought.
I guess people can fly.
I guess people can fly. I didn't know people can fly was that big. I was like, man, they're that big.
It's people can buy.
Yeah,
Right? We've
oh,
been pronouncing it
God.
wrong the
Bye.
entire
Yeah.
time.
Bye.
you
Yeah.
can't buy you. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're watching mid-tier studios buy small indie developers. Then
See?
those mid-tier studios getting bought by large developers,
Yep.
and those large developers getting bought by publishers.
Yep.
This is a
Circle of life.
nasty ecosystem.
No, it's really interesting. We're even seeing like, smaller developers and mid-tier developers that are opening their own publishing wings, right? Like it's like we're seeing a
Combining.
lot of change within what we've traditionally thought as the traditional game development, publishing, and distribution system.
Mhm.
I think we've talked about it in previous episodes about how like what those changes can mean in on the good side and the bad side. But I find it
Yeah,
interesting. I think
we
anything that allows more cool experiences to get out there, and allows people to sort of pool their talents and do anything to alleviate how difficult it is to make games. Because, like I said, y'all, making games is hard. It is a minor
it
miracle
is.
that any game gets shipped.
I remember, yeah, I mean, it wasn't that long ago, and anyone who's been a producer for longer than a decade remembers this. Like when marketing used to come into your office and say, "We need 10 bullet points for the back of the box,"
Yes.
right?
Yes,
And it'd
back
be
in the
like, "Well, first of all, why don't you go make it? Okay, it's your job to sell it. I gotta go make the donuts. Now you telling me I have to go sell them to
Sell the
you?
donuts.
Like,
Yep.
like what? You know, it's like
You gotta tell us the
Like,
flavor.
why don't you play my game? Then
yeah,
you'll know what
because
my game is about. You can make your
yeah,
own.
because I remember because we were thinking that the 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 job of the cover was to make the user pick it up and turn it over, right? That's what you wanted. You wanted something that the customer would grab and turn over to read the back.
Yep.
And you wanted the spine to be you wanted the spine to be interesting to do the same thing just in case you weren't turned frontwards in the shells. Now, like no
Digital
one even
shells.
pays attention to that anymore, right?
You turn over a digital box.
Nobody
Yeah,
does it. Nobody
exactly.
pays attention to it anymore.
Exactly. Now it's like play this game. Yeah, that was good. Give me $100
Yep.
for this
Yep.
season.
For the season. And speaking of season, right? Like Apex Legends update their game this week, and Fortnite just launched a new season. And not only did Fortnite launch a new seasons, Call of Duty launched a new season.
Yep.
They all launched new seasons. Like we're all launching seasons at the same time now. I was like, what is this? Christmas all over again? And I'm waiting. And I'm and Grand Theft Auto launched the season like last week or so, like April. Grand Theft Auto started the April release. The spring release was all Grand Theft Auto. They were like, we're not gonna release our game at Christmas. We're gonna let Call of Duty and Guitar Hero. They're gonna have that. We'll let them have that. We're gonna drop it in April when nothing's going on.
Boom. Now
Now
what?
everybody's dropping in April.
Now what?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think that I don't know whether or not it's going to be interesting, Chuck, like what happens, right?
Mhm.
Like, does this really mean now there's not going to be any more seasons, like any more legit seasons anymore, right?
Yeah.
As we start moving to these different models and how we monetize like our big hits, like
Yeah.
a lot of times they're based on other things, they're on other marketing conditions.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting
and it,
time.
and
Like,
it's based and that's based on indies because
yeah,
indies are like, I'm trying to find a window I can drop my game and nothing else big or being
exactly.
released. I'm just finding that window.
Yep.
Getting harder and harder.
Yeah, it's getting
Yeah.
harder and harder. It's getting harder and harder. And speaking of indie developers, we go further into that, the game design and the developers. People think that this is what people want to go to big studios and then they can do everything. I'm gonna be an artist, I'm gonna be a programmer, and I'm gonna be a game designer at Bungie. Like, no, you have one role. If you want to do everything, you have to be an independent developer. And trust me, you don't want to do everything because it's a lot of work. There's no glory in it.
No, it's a lot of work. I think I think a few different things we've talked, and this is another thing we've talked about a few times. Just like it's like even though the barriers for making a game are lower than they've ever been, like, and the information is out there. We do, like, as an industry, we do a terrible job of teaching people how to make games, and so you still have a lot of folks coming in saying, "Man, I want to make a game. I've got a great idea, and I want you guys to turn it into a game." And it's like, okay, Number one, idea doesn't equal game. Idea equals like story, probably. Like a
Not
game.
even, yeah, it doesn't even necessarily have to equal story sometimes.
Yeah.
But let's start with their idea isn't that good.
Yeah. There's
Damn,
that
son,
too.
My
shots
life.
fired.
But so
Shots fired.
getting people to understand that all the different roles, that how they work together and how they're all really necessary, and they have different areas of ownership in order to create this really complex thing that is a game too, as well.
And seasons don't make people think games are easier to make. They don't think people. Maybe I said it all wrong. People don't think the games are harder to make because you have seasons now. Like Rodney came at. He says Valorant has a new season next week too. They launching their new season. So April's the month of new seasons.
Yeah.
Apparently.
So back to what we were saying earlier, though, and I think this is important, Shanae, especially
Retcon.
right. So no, where they say I've got this great idea for a game, right? And then they're basically telling you, their game idea, which is really a story, right? All right, now tell people the story of Hades, right? That won all these awards, and it's literally you're a kid trying to get out of hell. Done.
But there's a whole story. There's a dialogue.
But it goes back to my whole thing about right. There is the idea, right, which is I'm this emo sort of guy trying to get out of hell by beating the hell out of everything I come in contact with. Right.
And if you described Hades as just that, like you're like, cool, but what's it play like?
Exactly. Right.
It doesn't tell me anything about. It tells me about the game, but it doesn't really tell me anything about the game.
Right.
Like what you're telling me is like if they made a graphic novel of Hades, that's what it would be. Yeah. Like that's the story.
And in Hades, in a Hades case, it literally is the devil is in the details.
But this is why I got
I'm here all week, by the way.
Oh, yeah, so silly. But see, that's one thing a lot of people don't understand. For game designers, the fictional rapper is the last thing we really truly discover. We figure out what makes the game feel good. And feeling good is what you're doing in the game and how visceral it feels when you put your hands on a controller, a mouse, a keyboard, or on a screen, how the visceral that feels and what makes that feel good.
Right.
Like people don't understand. What is the story of Angry Birds? Thank you.
There were some birds that were really angry that some pigs were coming to their island.
Yeah,
and
yes.
It's
$1 billion.
$1 billion. And the beauty of that game is that game was 47 times all over the App Store. It was a common game. And this one developer got the spring to feel, the sound effects to feel right. They're like, what do we make these things? And one dude's like, scrum meeting pigs and chickens. And that's exactly where it came from. Pigs and chickens from a scrum meeting.
Nice.
And they turned into the birds and they had the pigs. And that's what it was.
That's even better.
And it worked. And they're like,
if that doesn't make you put your pen down.
Yes.
Okay.
So let's dive deeper into that, because everybody thinks games are stories. No, stories are placed on top of a game as a fiction or a wrapper. You can have a game. If you have great mechanics, you can make that a spy shooter. You can make it a space shooter. You can make it a cowboy shooter. It doesn't even matter. But because it feels good, people just buy it.
Well, and we can talk about this in the realm of like development milestones, like the really rough sort of way that we think about development from a high level, right? There's things like figuring out like the basic design stuff. You move into prototyping, you move into your vertical slice, your alpha, your beta, your submission builds, and all those things are not built around story development points. Those are built around gameplay systems and like establishing the code and making sure the stuff's underlying. Like when you're doing prototype, you might have heard of the phrase like gray box or that sort of thing, like used as like a concept. What that really is, like when we talk about gray boxing, like we're talking about gray boxing gameplay elements, mechanics, and functions and features. It's talking about, let's not put any art on it. It's going to be boxes. It's probably going to be primitives like spheres and boxes and cubes. And if you can, how does that feel when you're playing, when you don't have music distracting you, when you don't have the visuals distracting you, when you don't have lighting making stuff look sexy? Like you just have, if I can make a game feel fun and good when it's one cube jumping on like a bunch of boxes and like, shooting like spheres at something else, then of course the art's going to make it even better. Of course the
Yep.
music's going to make it even
Mhm.
better. So that's one of the things that we do. That we do in game development. Like oftentimes we try and like just figure out those gameplay mechanics before you start making it more complex and complicated. And don't get me wrong, someone is probably still at that point in the project. You better hope you probably have an art director over there, like trying to figure out what's the visual direction for the game and all that kind of stuff. And they're going to try and put that art in your prototype. Do what you can to keep it out, because as soon as art winds up on something, it feels final. And then suddenly your feedback changes.
Uh-huh.
So like that's what we try and keep those things separate. I always say try. There's an asterisk next to everything because we're talking about ideal game development, not what game
Yes.
development usually is.
By the way, I think I remember. I think you told me, Nate, about like a story about you went and sat in on some talk from Nintendo where they discussed like the mechanics of like making Wii Sports or something like that. I think it was right.
Hmm.
Do you remember this talk and talking about?
Probably.
Yeah. We're like, because people, a lot of developers were kind of like, hey, Nintendo, give us some more help, so we can make games like you make. Because remember how many like Wii Sports clones came out after like Wii Sports blew up?
Mm-hmm.
There were a ton, and everyone's like, I'm gonna try and put out my game like this, and like they weren't doing well. And so their developers were asking like, Nintendo, give us some more like feedback. So Nintendo did like a talk where they're like, here's how we develop Wii Sports. We developed it because we were just focusing on like the actual gameplay mechanic and what was fun. They're like, we didn't care about the graphics, we didn't care about any of this other stuff. We just worked on this. And then we did that for like 2 years.
Yep.
Until we perfected it. And then the rest of it was really easy.
Yeah. And as soon as they said the 2 years part, everybody tuned out. They're like,
everyone was like, well, they're like, well, I don't want to work on this development cycle for 2 years. I just want to like throw something out like, in 6 to 8 months. And Nintendo was just like, well, this is how we make a good game. And that's one thing for Nintendo. Like they do not care how long it takes.
They don't.
They
don't.
do not
Well,
care.
no,
People
because y'all
understand
keep
Breath of
buying
the-
the old game, so they don't care. Look,
I want to fund that next game.
here's the thing. I remember a friend of mine actually ran into Miyamoto, and said, "I really like your third person camera, right?" And he said, "Which one?" and she was like, "Well, this one." And he said, "Those are dozens of cameras," right? And it was like, "Oh." Right.
Yeah.
And so what Nintendo does very well, and I will never take this away from them, is they make gameplay seem simple.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it is not.
Yes. They're king of the big red button. They're king of the big red button. Hit that one button. That button does a million things, but you only give you one button.
But it's all contextual and it all
feels
right.
good.
I remember actually sitting down with some game designer friends of mine, and we actually argued for days about what is gameplay. And and it's the most succinct thing that we came up with is it's when action equals intent, right? Like gameplay, when what you're doing actually makes that character do exactly what you thought it was going to do. That is good gameplay. Right?
Not only that, it feels the way you think it should feel.
Yeah, it does.
It's
like
visceral. Because mechanically, I can do. There's a lot of games that get mechanical things right, but it doesn't feel visceral. There's no emotion. There's no soul in it.
Yeah, and shout out to Shanae on this whole, like, the first time I really saw this happening was during Devil May Cry when we were playing Devil May Cry, and your actions, especially when the camera, you would cross like a flipping point or a turning point in the camera. But because you kept, your input was constant, it would flip that, and it'd be like this relative camera control, right? Instead of absolute camera control. And it was like, it just blew my mind, right? I was just like, whoa, wait a minute. You mean like as soon as I turn loose the controller, like it reorients, like, because it remembered like what I meant to do? Holy cow. Like, well, I mean, my head just went.
In Devil May Cry, we didn't want you to fight the camera. We wanted everything else to kick your ass.
Right. Yeah. Mission accomplished in Devil May Cry.
Yeah. I mean, people don't understand how important camera is. Like, for example, God of War 3 has amazing cameras. Yeah, they have 8 camera engineers and 8 camera designers working on just camera.
So you don't have
not combat or anything.
So because like I tell you, like I what was it? I think it was yeah, it was a Final Fantasy. But of course it was. It was a Final Fantasy where I said the biggest monster I fight in this game is the camera. I don't want it.
Yes.
I think the way you describe the gameplay is action equals intent. That's such a beautiful, succinct way of describing. I'm going to steal that, by the way, just so you know.
It's yours.
I'll probably credit you, maybe. But no, it's exactly that, right? And that's one of the places where we get into so much trouble when we talk about overcomplicating designs. When we talk about, I mean, so often, like one of the things that takes away from an experience and makes you feel like, oh, I'm not actually inhabiting this world and fighting these things. I'm pressing buttons on a controller, and the buttons I pressed, why do I have to hold down L1, R1, R2, and then click the right stick? What? Like, how is that supposed to be a punch, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's so often that things like that happen, and when you put the player's intent, like when I won't say it's above all, but when you make sure that is like in the forefront of your mind when you're designing these actions and designing how people interact with the game, that's super important to making it a seamless and fun experience.
Yep. A game that I like to always reference is Bayonetta. Like the combat in Bayonetta is remarkable. Like, which is the first game where you feel like I'm not blocking this big ass enemy. I'm gonna walk up to it and dodge it, put it in witch time, and put some whoop ass on that enemy. I'm gonna put some whoop ass on it. And
we used to refer to that as Angel May Cry.
Angel May Cry. It is Angel May Cry. It is Angel. But it's a perfect hack and slash game. Like everything feels good about it because everything you're thinking about doing, it shows you, and it feels good. Like honestly. Bayonetta, she has the best walk cycle ever in a video game. She switches unnaturally, but when she runs, it's like, man, I just pulled that out of the demo box over here. She runs like Tom Cruise. It's so weird.
Nothing exemplifies that. Like seriously, Capcom, old alumni, like they look. That is done extremely well. It's done extremely well in Street Fighter. It's done extremely well in Devil May Cry. I mean, Devil May Cry, like they showed you, like, here's a few maneuvers, right? And then you did that mental math in your head. You said, wait, if I actually launch this dude in the air, I think I'm quick enough where I can shoot him where he won't come down.
Yep.
Let me see if
Yes. And then the game does it, and you're just like, what?
and then it says, hey, homeboy, you almost had it. I'm gonna give you a C.
Yes.
Right? And you're like, what? So basically what you're telling me is that I had it right, that I had it almost right, but I'm on the right track. Hold on, let me try this again. B plus, homeboy. And that's exactly it, like, Devil May Cry kept giving you pop quizzes every second of the game.
Yeah.
The thing that Travis is talking about here, I think is one of the like, it's something that's absolutely critical in game, and it's one of the things that you see from a lot of developers like your Nintendos and stuff, like those folks who do have literally years to invest in those sort of like honing,
not beholden to the schedule.
Yeah, like in honing those sorts of things. Because I remember I had a moment just like what Travis is that just stuck with me from Breath of the Wild, which was, I had my bow and arrow, and I saw there were apples in the tree, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna try and shoot one of those apples out of the tree, not expecting it to work. Pull my bow and arrow, shot the apple, boom. I was like, I shot an apple out of a tree.
How'd you feel, Sinead? Seriously.
I know it felt great. It's like the most mundane thing, right?
Because you meant to do that.
Yeah, I did. Like the game did such a good job of teaching me what I could do in this game world, and that's really when we're talking about game design, we're talking about creative illusion development, right? Like you can't actually do anything.
No.
But the game's gotta make you feel like you can do anything. Yep. Right? Like I don't want to see the invisible barriers, right? I don't
improv.
I don't want to run up against
yes and it's the yes and game. Yes, you can do that, and you can do this too.
That made me feel
yes.
Yep.
It's when you go up to that young lady and she makes you think you got a shot.
Go, Sheree, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say one other example from Breath of the Wild was I don't remember, like somewhere near the beginning of the game, I somehow managed to get onto a mountain that was cold. It turned night and it started freezing. And I was just like, and I happened to be like near a little fire. And every time I tried to walk away from the fire, I would start dying. And I'm like, I don't have enough hearts. I'm gonna die if I try and walk away from this fire. And so I'm like, what do I do? I think I'm stuck. I think I'm gonna die. And I was like, the only weapon I have right now is a stick. I'm gonna try lighting this stick on fire, and there's a fire near me. Maybe this will work. And it worked. When I walked away, the fire, like, because I had the fire and the stick, I was not dying, and I was like, I'm shocked that worked.
See,
somebody thought of this.
It's great because
I love
it has
that
the illusion of emergent gameplay, but it had to be deliberate.
Yeah, it had
for that mess to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I've been in places in Breath of the Wild that I shouldn't have had no business being because I wasn't strong enough. And that game is not unlike other JRPGs or Japanese game where they punish you for being where you're not supposed to be. They're like, no, we'll allow you figure it out to get out of here because you can be anywhere in this game. And that's what they said. You could go anywhere in this game. If you want to go straight to Ganon, you can go right in there and fight if you want to. You may get beat up, but you can go do it. We'll let you do it.
You want to go screw with a Lionel?
You can get past the Guardians to get to Ganon.
That's really hard. That's really hard to thread that needle though. Sometimes, right? Is that how am I feeling here?
Yeah.
Right. Am I feeling because I suck? Or am I somewhere where I'm not supposed to be?
Yeah.
Or both, or none of those things, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's a beauty. I think of at least classic Nintendo, like especially on N64s. I felt like every one of these situations, they never put me in a situation that I could not solve. I'm just not thinking correctly, or I'm not, or whatever, right? So let me figure this out. And that's also the big danger in designing an open world is that you could literally be in a place where you're not supposed to be because you ain't that pimp enough.
Yeah.
Get your game up before you come into this hood because you're gonna get smacked down in the forest.
And that's frustrating when you play those games where you get somewhere you're not supposed to be and you can't get back. That means like I've wasted all this time in my game, make me a badass character, and I accidentally went somewhere because I thought I could.
Now you're playing a massively multiplayer online game.
Yeah, and then get pulled back in it. And there's games like Arkham Asylum, right? Rocksteady didn't have a lot of money because they blew all their money trying to figure out what their game was going to be. They're like, we give you one level, and we gate the level about your abilities when you unlock them. You're just in Arkham Asylum the whole entire game. It's one level.
Yep.
And it unlocks the game. And you as you get better, you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be here. Oh, I'm fucking Batman.
And I bet you that's because they paid a lot of attention to Metroid.
Yes. Yes.
That's exactly how Metroid is designed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
see, I don't hate all of Nintendo.
You have said so many nice things about Nintendo on this.
It's kind of wild, actually. This is nice.
I know where it comes from, right? I know where it comes from, and I give them props. I just don't want to play Kirby no more.
Kirby's amazing. First of all, we're not gonna talk bad of Kirby on here, okay? Him and Yoshi, none of those weird yarny type games, artistic games. You're not gonna talk bad about them.
Yeah.
We found Chuck's line.
Yes. That is Nintendo's attempt at indie games with $50 million budgets.
I mean, the thing I do love about Nintendo, because we're talking about game design, right? And they are some of the best in the biz for some of the reasons we just talked about, right? Now, a lot of it does have to do with, like Cherie was saying, when Nintendo did that talk and explained, hey, here's how we designed this very small pack-in game, Wii Sports, to be absolutely amazing. I mean, it was a game that got my at the time 65-year-old parents to get a Wii and get my 75-year-old aunt to get a Wii and get her best friend who's also 75 to get a Wii.
Actually, to clarify, I got them to get me to get them all Wiis. Yes. So I bought 9 Wiis at that.
But they were all just like, I heard about this thing called the Wii. I don't know what it is, but you can play bowling in your living room and it feels real, right? And like that's the thing that's the reason why when I often talk about game design, I go to Nintendo as like one of the shining examples of it, because it feels straightforward, it looks straightforward. We've all played those games, so we have a sense of like that sort of like Zelda style of game design of like, hey, I'm walking through this dungeon and I see targets everywhere, but I don't have anything in my inventory that allows me to do anything with that. What is that? Oh, I've opened a chest. Oh, I've got a bow and arrow. Oh, but I can shoot this. Oh, I can, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting, really smart. And then you start remembering all the places throughout the world that you saw that exact same visual language that you need to go back to, because you were messing around with it before and you're like, I have no idea how to get up here. Oh, now I've got a hook shot. I can get up there, right? Yep. And so I love them for that. But one of the things that Sheree mentioned earlier was like, Nintendo talked about the reason why this stuff is feels so intuitive is because we spent 2 years doing it. That's one of the additional challenges that like any game developer, especially smaller game developers, have, is because you don't got 2 years. Not only do you not have 2 years worth of like attention that you want to put into it, but there's a pretty good chance you don't even have 2 years worth of funding.
Yeah.
And can I
want to do
like,
it? Go ahead, Travis.
To put a finer point on that too, I think the only system that I have seen people who are not gamers pick up and do that with, honestly, it's been an Oculus. And I think it is because once you're actually in it, everything presents itself in sort of these natural ways that it's no longer the user experience that people have to know how to play a fighting game, or they have to know this. It's their hands, right?
Yeah.
Or it's where they're looking or where they're pointing, and reality buys you so much as far as user experience is concerned, right? That it was the first console that I have ever seen my aunties go out and buy, right? And that blew my mind. It blew my mind. They were like, oh, this Oculus, and and they had such a visceral, and it was very much like the Wii experience that they had, because they were like, hey, I'm doing this thing with bowling and it seems to work. I'm doing this thing with tennis and it seems to work. And I think that's a good lesson for people is that the more you can make your interface feel more like what people do naturally,
make it more accessible,
the faster people are going to pick up on your product.
It's also about from a world building and a mechanic building standpoint, like you have to the rules of your world have to make sense, and you have to communicate that to your player in whatever the most succinct way to do it. Like the fact that I could like shoot an arrow off of a tree, or shoot an apple off of a tree with a bow and arrow in Zelda was awesome. And the game had they had already established stuff within that world that led me to believe that was possible, which is why I even tried it. I also likewise I think shot I was trying to make a rope bridge fall, and I think I shot the rope and it also fell. And I was like, yes, that's right. My arrows interact with the real world environment. They've taught me this. So I'm going to go and experiment wherever I can to see if I can do it. And that's one of the things that we also talk about, making sure that your worlds are internally consistent. When we talk about stories and that a game is not a story, right? A story is a part of a game. But more so than just the story, we like to talk about world building, because if your world doesn't make sense, if suddenly your characters just start flying and you're like, wait, this is not a game where characters fly. Like if Link just suddenly took off, we're not talking about when he floats down, he just suddenly started flying through the air. You're like, what has happened, Nintendo? I thought I was Hyrulean, right?
Yeah.
So it wouldn't make sense. And it would it's that suspension of disbelief. We have to find the right place where we teach players, here are the rules of this world. They may not be the same as the rules of the real world in which you inhabit, which is fine because games are escapism in a lot of ways. But it's also making sure that all of your gameplay designs, mechanics, motifs, all that kind of stuff rolls up into something that makes sense still for a player.
The story is not the world. The world is a set of rules, mechanics, and systems that you put in place that people play. And they don't have to be a lot of them. Hades proves that. You go around beating up things.
Yeah.
You mentioned Arkham Asylum. Arkham Asylum proves that, right? That in Arkham was so good. It was so good.
Gosh, every Mario game proves this every moment of every day.
One thing, you hop on turtles, you hop on things.
Yep.
You hop and every now and then they throw a fireball. He may throw
Sometimes you do it in 3D. Sometimes
Right,
it's
yeah.
scroll.
Maybe. You got him in 3D. He does the same thing he did in 2D. And we made a paper version of him. He does the same exact things.
Right?
But that's a good place to conclude our show. Story is not video game. Video games are a set of rules that are consistent with the world that you create, with the systems and the mechanics, which is what you do. You don't have to do much. You have to do it well. So polish that, and you can make a video game with 2 people. You do it really, really well. You don't have to
Can I
have 500
suggest?
people.
Can I suggest next week, Chuck, that we discuss when your game is a story and how to do that successfully in Hollywood?
Yes, we could do that. We should do
Yeah.
that. We should do that. We could talk about how Hollywood gets it wrong with their stories of making video games, and yet video games get it right all the time.
Was there a video game movie that came out?
Fight.
I don't know. Maybe we can talk
Fight.
about that.
More, we'll talk about Mortal Kombat next week. We'll give people a week to watch it before we spoil it all the way up. Because Mortal Kombat games has great story. I'm like, how do you ruin this? We'll talk about
Let's
that.
find out.
And since Ryan was quiet, we knew he was working. Ryan, what you got for us? What you got? Look at me smiling. Look at him. I speak with my art.
Show us what you got.
So what you got before we close
Okay,
out of
I
here.
can show you guys this. So I'm just doing some cleanups on some inks right here. Hold on.
Speaking Spanish to people out there, cleanups on some inks. What does that mean?
I'm inking a page, an actual
Uh-huh.
page in this
You're,
comic.
you're cleaning it up. Wait. So has someone drawn something and then you drew
No.
something right on top of that?
I drew something. I had an inker ink it, and
So he
now
traced
I'm
it.
doing the cleanup.
Tracer.
I'm doing the cleanup
That's
on it.
where I know where you're going with the tracer
Tracer.
thing.
They call them inkers. Show some respect.
Inker.
Tell them. They call them inkers. Tell them, Ryan.
I know he's
Hold
going.
on.
Was that chasing Amy?
Okay, we see a guy with some scribbly lines.
No, that wasn't it. Hold on.
That's not.
what you got, Ryan. Come on.
That doesn't look like there was no ink on that, Ryan.
I know.
No ink on it.
You didn't even
But-
trace it. How about you send that to me? I'll trace it for you.
While he's bringing this up though, like
Okay.
we're joking obviously, but like inking takes a massive amount of talent to do
A
it well and to do it
massive.
quickly too. Oh my goodness! Whether
Okay.
you're doing it digitally or doing it,
Oh wow.
especially when you're doing it with traditional media. Ooh,
Is that who I think it is?
D?
Yes, it's D.
Nice.
Sam Darnold.
500
D, baby.
It's the D, baby.
I wouldn't put
Wow.
it like that.
Have I ever told you how much I hate that you can do this? Wow.
Empire Hunter D. Nice. That's
D.
bringing
So
me
on this-
back.
this
It's
is-
been
it's a
so
big page.
long since I
There's a
saw
lot of
that.
stuff going on, and so.
Nice.
All right.
I ain't
Nice.
shutting it down with Vampire Hunter D. Whatever,
Okay.
man. Whatever.
On that note, I
Cut
shut
his-
the
cut
show
his mic.
down. You know, it was a good show, guys. I mean, we should talk about this next week too. This is what we're going to talk about. That in game movies and how they do story wrong. With that being said, I'm gonna close today's show. Thank you for tuning in. Shout out to Digital Click for always delivering great artwork, and you provide to us for every show. If you want to learn more about technubians, then you hit us up at www.technubians.com, and that's techn00bians.com. Please follow us on here on Twitch. If you like our vibe and you want to kick it with us some more and learn more about game development and everything geek, please consider subscribing to our channel. You have Amazon Prime. Use your Prime Gaming and subscribe. It'll cost you nothing. It'll help us out, of course. Also, follow us on all our socials. Search for the Geekish Network on all major media platforms, including Apple Music and Spotify, whatnot. We are our podcast network. Make sure that you tune in when we do our live streams of video games. We're currently running an anti-Asian hate live stream. We're trying to raise $500, and then we're doing it in honor of my boy Rodney, my business partner, and in lieu of a loss he had with his family a while back, and he's playing video games. So definitely tune in, play video games. Let's take this 500 to at least 1,500, you guys. Let's do this. So let's contribute to the gameplay that we're going to be doing for the rest of the month. Tune in tonight. We have Pod Squadron, which is our Star Wars podcast. And on Sunday, we have Nerdtastic. Tune in for Nerdtastic tomorrow. Anybody got anything else to say? to next week.
Travis said some really nice things about Nintendo this week, and I think we should all remember that.
Yeah.
So he has it in him. He has it in him. We just have to pull it out.
No, I'm good.
I don't know about you guys. I got to get back on Call of Duty because they got a new.
Oh Lord!
trying to
they
get
got
that,
a new season.
that Adler
Got the-
skin. So
Okay. Okay. With that being said, you guys, peace.
Yep.